Alrighty, today we are looking at MIDI. Yay! So MIDI is musical instrument digital interface, I believe. And so that is just like more panels, like the keyboards, drums, like those. I think they're called launch pads. I don't know it. You know, the little squares, and you play music on them. You can get some digital ones and a couple of other things as well. So just another way of controlling Unreal, giving you some physical dials, some things with sort of very fine granular movement rather than just a button. That is why I have a C-stand going over my shoulder and a GoPro today, because the one I am using is this one. It is the Korg Nano Control with a K too. Never heard of it. No, I've heard of it because I've had this for a while now. So this is a USB MIDI device. I'm not going to unplug it because then I'd restart Unreal, but it just runs off. So you can get USB adapters for actual MIDI. It looks like XLR but with like 5 pins, you know, like a U shape. Or like this was $100 Australian. I use it every now and then in Premiere Pro for audio mixing. But we've got all these faders and then some panners. We've got solo, mute, and record for all these channels, as well as some transport / shuttle controls and some marker controls, which it's like these buttons here are pretty much the only things I use in Premiere Pro. Funny that. So we're going to look at how we can do that in Unreal. So we're in 4.26, but this should work. I know MIDI's been in it since at least 4.24, so I mean, you know, it may have been in there even further back, but that's the version of Unreal we're going to use. If you just search for MIDI device, here it is. So it is in beta, but so is everything, I guess. At some point, beta is just going to be good enough. Yes, and restart. So we're just in a blank project today. While that's restarting, I've had a few people ask about having MIDI or OS0 stuff running outside of play mode. That's for end display, and if you've watched my recent video about the overview of our virtual production shoot, then that we also use that outside of play mode. So I am looking into that, but I haven't. It's working outside of play mode. It's just now referencing things and controlling things, because I tried a blueprint interface, but that was crashing Unreal, so I need to look into it. So this one today is going to be in play mode. If you've watched the OSC tutorial, this is going to be like deja vu for you. Very, very, very similar. So what we're going to go ahead and do is create a blueprint for our MIDI device. We're just going to use an actor blueprint. Yeah, actor blueprint. I'm going to call it MIDI control. Like so. Go ahead and open it up. Alrighty, so we're going to get rid of these two. We just need the event begin play. First we need to search for our MIDI devices that's plugged into the computer, so you can use multiple. So I mean, like, I looked at, I could not find any other instruments beside keyboards and drums that use MIDI, but assuming you do have like a guitar or something, you could hook a whole band up to Unreal and have it do stuff, which we're trying with drums at least, which will be cool when that gets in the mail. Alrighty, so first we need to do is search for our MIDI devices. So this is going to be very similar to the Steam one, when we find all the Steam device IDs. So we want the find all MIDI device info, and this is just going to return us an array of all the MIDI devices that are plugged into our computer. So I'm going to do a for each loop and plug the array of devices in like so. And then on the loop out, we're going to add a print string. So we're going to be using quite a lot of print strings today to just to debug stuff, because obviously this isn't labeled and Unreal doesn't pick up. It's not very obvious, I don't think, as to what's what on this. We are going to go device size. So I would just use if you just search for break MIDI device info out of the array element, that's going to get us this node. We're then going to use the device ID into a print string. Compile, save. Drag this into our furniture level, that's what I'm going to call it, and hit play. And then, ta-da, we get right there, you saw it come up. It's also in the output log. Somewhere, there it is. 1. Alrighty, so what we're going to do is, I'm going to unplug this. I'm going to assign this to 1 on the keyboard, just in case you need to come back to it. If you don't see your MIDI device, make sure it is plugged in and working before opening Unreal. I had that issue. You can't just like whack it in like a mouse or a keyboard, which is a bit annoying. Alrighty, so what we're next going to do is type MIDI again. Alright, so to find most of... it seems that like sometimes they show up, sometimes they don't. You might have to untick context sensitive. We're going to do the create MIDI device input controller. Okay, and then immediately you see the device ID, which is what we just looked for, so we're going to change that to 1. The MIDI buffer size, not 100, I think that's like the data that MIDI is sending in, but I don't know if that's, I'm pretty sure that's bytes, maybe bits. That's been fine for me, unless you plan on like smacking every button at once. I don't think that's going to be an issue. So next what we're going to do is we're going to take that out and promote it to a variable. So you may remember this, I mentioned this in the OSC tutorial. Essentially the Unreal's garbage collector comes along and deletes. If we just reference that straight, eventually Unreal's garbage collector gets rid of it while it's running, which means it randomly disconnects. So promote to a variable like so. We are then going to drag off it again and type bind. And here is where you're going to have to maybe do a little bit of experimentation. Okay, so, and then, yeah. Alrighty, so the buttons on this controller, alrighty, to get those on this controller exactly, I'm not saying it's going to work for everything, we want a bind event to on MIDI note on, which is this one. So we're going to do that. For the faders, sorry, I'm just checking my notes. We want the MIDI pitch bend. So same thing, bind on, and we want the pitch bend. And the panners, these ones at the top, I could not get working from this device in Unreal. But yeah, just go through and check everything you've got in that list, and see what happens. So what we are now going to do is we're going to set up a debug, because now we need to essentially map what everything is. I already know because I've done this before, but for you guys at home. So drag off the event node here and hit type create event, like so. And then under here we're going to go create a matching event, and we're going to call this MIDI button on. Button on. Oh, that's still not quite spelled right. And then same thing again for this other one. Create event. And we're going to go create a matching event, and we're going to call MIDI pitch bend. I'm trying to type over the top of this pitch bend. Right, so if you've done the OSC tutorial, this is where it starts to look the same. So essentially, these two events are going to fire whenever we send data from the MIDI device into Unreal. Okay, so next what we need to do is we need a print string for each of these, like so. I'm going to change the color of them. I'm going to change this one to like a red. Alrighty, we're then going to get an append node. Spelled right, here we go. Append string node. Put that in there. Copy and paste it and put it in here. Alright. So what we want is the note for this one. And in the top one, I'm going to type pitch. Not pitch, sorry. A button note colon space. So that'll then tell us that, and in this bottom one, we are going to get the pitch. What we are going to do is we are going to get the channel and the pitch. So I'm going to type in this append node pitch blend colon space pitch blend colon space. Actually, I'm going to pitch blend channel colon space, and then I'm going to add some more pins. I'm going to put the channel in there, and then I'm going to type pitch colon space and put the pitch in there. Alright, so what are we doing? So when we do an input on the MIDI device, depending on whether it's a note or a pitch, we are then calling these events, and then what these events are doing is getting the data. So in the case of our button, it is the note, which is the number of the button we pressed, and we're just sort of putting that out as a string, so we can write that down for future use. In the case of the pitch bend, what it is I type blend there, not bend. So what the pitch bend is it is telling us what channel it is, which is what one we've just moved. It is then also telling us what the pitch is, which is the amount we've moved it, so to speak. If that makes sense. Hopefully, we then hit go, and it'll make more sense. So if I hit a button, alrighty. So OBS also uses MIDI controllers, and that was screwing with Unreal, so I had to figure that out. But now we hit play, and as I move it, so that's alright. So if we look closely, red's probably a bad color to choose. So it says this is channel 1, and it pitch is 0 to 16,383. If I move the next one, this is channel 2. Same values, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Alright. As you can see, the faders don't work. Next is the buttons. So we hit this one here, that is note 0, 1, 2, 3. And so it just goes in a row, back and forward. 16, 8. It's like 0, 8, 16. So it's the bottom row, then the top row, then the middle row. Then it comes over somewhere here as well. Actually, I think technically these faders are considered buttons. This is 23. So it goes 23 and then it jumps to 46. Yeah, 46. 90. That makes sense. Doesn't make sense. Oh well. Doesn't, that is, like I said, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. That's why we did this sort of debugging. So, grab your trusty yellow sticky notes and your Bic pen. Bic, is Bic a brand outside of Australia? It doesn't matter. And so we're going to write it down. So the faders are 1 to 8. And they go from 0 to 1, 6, what did I say? 16, 383. And the buttons go from 0 to 20, 0 to 23. Alrighty, so turns my GoPro has just stopped recording because it said it was too hot, which I'd never heard of, and I thought that's a bit strange. What if you're some cool dude, you know, surfing or whatever, and then you lose half your GoPro footage because it stops because it was hot. I was like, that's a bit strange. And then it turns out, because the GoPro battery was low, I put it on charge while I was using it, and I plugged it into a USB-C wall plug, which is delivering like 80 watts of electricity or something. And the GoPro is trying to do something with all those watts of electricity that it does not need, and apparently it's just turned it into heat. Alright, so I've unplugged it now because it is like fully charged in about 2 seconds. So I've written it down. We're not going to be using all of these buttons and faders and stuff today, but yeah, there's probably, maybe take a photo of it and then draw over the photo of what the buttons are or something, like, because it doesn't make sense. Alrighty, so now that we have what we need, we're going to delete these print string notes because we don't need them. So what we're going to do is we need to come up with things that we can do with these buttons and stuff. I'll admit I'm a bit boring. I always do. I've tried to think of like things to do other than just like, oh, we can change the exposure of the scene, but I can't. So what are we going to do? We're going to change the sun its height. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring this out. So we're going to use the pitch bend first, which is the faders, and we're going to go a switch. We want a switch on integer node, like so, and then we're going to put the channel into it. And so we had our faders are 1 to 8. So we're going to have 8 pins, or actually we're going to have 7 pins. We're then going to tell it that it starts at 1, and we do not need the default pin. Now we have 1 to 8. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a new function to make things look neat. I'm going to call this function set sun, like so. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn our pitch integer, which is that 0 to 16,383 value, we're going to turn that into a float value that we can use. So we're going to not remember what it's called. Every program calls it something different, and then it's even called something different in Unreal's Material Editor. Map range clamped. Map range clamp. There we go. So we're going to grab the map range clamp. We're going to put the pitch in. So our in range is 0 to 16,383. Our out range is going to be 0 to 1. So this is going to have a bajillion decimal places. That's okay. But so now we can use a 0 to 1 range quite easily. So I'm going to drag our set sun out of here. I'm going to plug it into 1. So just move it with 1. In the function, I'm going to add an input, which I'm going to call the pitch bend. I'm just going to keep calling it that. So what? And it's going to be a float. And then on our event graph, we're then going to plug in the map range into that. And so now in here we can actually do some stuff. So we're going to do some hard references because that's quick and easy and dirty. So I'm going to need the sun. I'm going to need the skylight and the sky sphere. Skylight. Skylight and sky sphere. There we go. Alrighty, so what we're gonna do is I'm quickly gonna put it into a category called sun, and put these two in that category as well. For the sun, the type of variable, we're just gonna make it an active object reference. There we go, and make it public. For the skylight, we need to make it a skylight variable. The variable as a skylight. Just because we do need object reference for all of these, by the way, because we do need to call something specific to that. And the last one is also going to be a BP SkySphere object reference, because again we have to make call something specific to that. Alright, so grab all of those like so. Next, go back to your level, make sure all of these are set to movable, and real-time capture is turned off for the skylight. So that's something new in Unreal 4.26. For our skylight, figure out what axes and by what amounts you want to move it. So I think the y-axis from 277 to 108. Alrighty, so get another map range clamped, like so. Plug in our pitch bend into that. The value that's coming in is 1 to 0, and the out range is going to be 108 to 277. Like so. We're then going to get a reference to our sun. We're going to set the actor transform, or the actor rotation, I guess. Plug that in there. Break this value, so we can just split the pin. Here we go. And this is on the y-axis. So now, when we hit play, and we move around, I just shift F1 out of it again, and click on our light source, we should see it move. Whoa, oh, my bad. Go to your MIDI control and actually set the sun as a value. So light source, I'm going to set this to the skylight, set this to the sky sphere. Okay, now when we do it, yeah, there we go. So you can see it's moving. So what's next? Next, what we need to do is we're going to take our sky sphere, and we're going to update it. So just call the function update sun direction. Did that change? Oh, the refresh material one, my bad. Whoops. Refresh material, there we go. So simply call this value, and that's all we have to do in this one, because it should already be set up to get the sun's value. So we just call it like that. And the last thing we're going to do is update the skylight. So that's called recapture sky, like so. And so this will mean that we get updated, I guess, the fake GI that the skylight makes. There we go. So now we can close that, and if we hit play, as I move this, sun up, sun down, sun, where is the sun? There we go. Sun up to midday, and we got like real early morning, mid morning, late morning, then I guess night, really early morning, I guess, before sunrise. And just like that, we've got, so my fat hand isn't in the way, we've got this nice granular, and we've got 16,383 individual steps on this fader that we can move it by. Now Unreal can't actually set the sun in, what would that be, 0.00001 degrees, but it allows us a much more, I think it's doing it by a degree. It is allowing us a much more granular control over it. You want to set very specifically something like so. Alrighty. So, and then it's the same thing for if you want to do the exposure or the focus, color grading, anything. I mean, I've mentioned it in a bunch of different tutorials, so you can do all of that. You know, it's the same principle. Take this value, map it to the value you want, da 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 da. Alrighty, the last thing to do is the buttons. So my GoPro's died. I don't think it liked that wrong charger thing. It's probably it's like the biggest problem with USB-C. Anyway, so the last thing is the buttons. So that is pretty easy as well. We're going to use a switch on integer node for that as well. Switch on integer, there we go. So now our buttons were 0 to 23. I'm just going to do the first 2 as an example. But you could just go through like this, and the we need to plug the channel into there. There we go. But the good thing is we don't have to pass on any data like this one with the pitch bend. So there we don't need to map or anything. It's just whenever we press that button, it'll then get filtered by this switch on int, and then it'll just call it. So to do that, I made a quick explosion blueprint because that's what I keep doing. So it's simply got the explosion effect in it, and then a custom event called trigger, and that just activates the explosion. I've then got a public variable referencing it, and so we're going to drag it off, and then we're just going to call the custom event. And I'll just set that to button 1, like so. So make sure it's referenced in our MIDI. Then we hit play. I didn't set it up right, so I can't call it repeatedly, but I hit it, and my bad, you want note, not channel, I forgot. So plug that into note, and then hit play. It sets off. I gotta wait for the particle system to finish before I can call it again, and then I hit the first button, and boom. Just like that. Pretty cool. Alright, so there you go. That's how to use MIDI, pretty much the same as OSC. Nice and simple. I am working on, a couple of people asked, I already talked about this, I think. Oh gosh, my head's everywhere. Yeah, I'm working on getting it running in the editor, but that's not yet. So next on the list, I believe, is going to be NDI, simply because I had to do that the other day and might as well make a video on it. Whether people want a video, I guess. Yeah, but other than that, thank you.